2. All right. We didn't miss too much. Yeah, so open source software. So we're looking at Greenshot. Open source software that means that the source code, the programming language that or programming files that it uses are available. And then if people want to modify it or change it, they have to make reference to the earlier versions. But people can use that to build on and build other software. So I'll check out Greenshot. It is free, it looks like, which is great. And yeah, so people are taking screenshots during a game because they want to show, like, you know, something that's happened. That's become very popular along with streaming and stuff like that. So yeah, there's lots of options out there. So find a way. I'll check this one out. This looks good. And that's another little tip thing I saw or posted the other night too, is if you're looking for software and you don't just type in free software, whatever it happens to be, look for, you know, open source screenshotting or open source game or whatever you happen to look for. And usually open source software a lot of times is just as good as commercial software. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's always free, but a lot of times there is a free version of open source software. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is always going to be no cost to it. So okay, so that was our first assignment that we were looking at. And in the other class, you guys have a quiz that's due, right? So if you're in both classes, you're in the CTS 110 and the 115. You might be in the quiz category here. Did anybody have, and that's not due until tomorrow, actually the 13th. So you got a couple more days to work on that. One thing we could do maybe tomorrow or possibly on Wednesday is I can have you guys split up into groups in the class. And so if there's some of them that you can't find, maybe make a note of those. As you're doing the quiz too, what I usually recommend is, you know, look for the answers, obviously. And if there's some that a couple of them you can't find, make a good guess, make a note of which question that was, and you can come back to it. So if there's people that maybe want to discuss some of the questions, if there's some that you can't find, most of them are probably pretty much right out of the book. Are you guys having any difficulties with the quiz so far?
No.
All right. Very quiet. Okay, so it's just over the first 3 chapters. You know, hopefully you guys are doing okay with that. There was a couple things I wanted to show you today. That's why I plugged in the phone too, so I could show you this stuff a little more easily. So we'll try this again. Let's see here. And hopefully it's a better quality camera. Okay, so I will need to find the other camera. There it is. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this at this point. Okay, so we've been talking about motherboards, and so you guys can still hear me through the main mic, I hope. Let's see how this is going to work here. We'll mute this one. Okay, can you?
There's still feedback.
I'm going to get rid of that. How's that?
There we go.
Better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So if you can see the motherboard down here, I'm going to try this camera instead because the webcam was having some issues. And this might be a good thing. I'm going to get a tripod. So if you look down inside the motherboard there, you can see the CMOS battery is what we were talking about on Friday. I'll try to hold this real still. And the CMOS battery on most computers is a disc shape, and they're pretty cheap to buy. Let's see if I can turn on that might help if I can turn on the light here. There we go, maybe. Okay, so the CMOS battery is down inside there. I've got the light on it. You can maybe see that. I don't know if that's going to turn out as well.
Does the motherboard keep that charged, or do we have to worry about it running out ever?
Yeah,
having to replace it? Is it a realistic problem?
Okay, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but it sounds like
Yeah.
you can't hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
Good job, David.
not working as well as the first. Okay, can you still hear me? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you guys
Yes.
better now. Okay,
Cool.
so the device I was going to show you guys today is the external hard drive tool. So I've got this. I'll unplug it from the USB. So what you've got, and these are all the components laid out here. It just comes in box like that. So this one happens to be USB 2.0. If I'm going to buy one right now, I would look for a USB 3.0 adapter. The USB speeds are quite a bit faster with USB 3.0, obviously. Okay, so here we have a regular desktop hard drive. It's 500 gigs. And we've got our adapter here. So the adapter goes to the SATA port. So this hard drive, if we can zoom in here, this hard drive has a SATA data connection and SATA power connection. Some of them also have a Molex power connector, which looks like this. So this device here has this power adapter. So this end of it, you can see that, is a Molex power connector. And then it adapts to the SATA power connector. So some of the hard drives might use this type. So this comes with both. And so basically you've got this power block that's plugged in at the other end. So you got a power block, goes to the wall, and then your power cable here, which we'll plug back in. Okay, so you've got power going to the SATA power port. It also has a little switch on it, which you can switch on and off. I'm going to switch it off for right now. So then we're going to plug this thing in to the SATA data or SATA power connector. Now this adapter is kind of interesting because it also includes an adapter for parallel for the ribbon cables, the older IDE connector, which you guys probably are not going to see anymore at this point. So if you see something that has a big wide ribbon cable inside of the computer case, you know, it gives you a pretty good idea of the vintage of the particular computer, but it is actually handy. So, you know, because you think about the types of computers that you might be using this on. Yeah, Elliot, that's a great suggestion. Tripod, I do have one at home. I need to get an adapter. I've got lots of tripods, but I need to get an adapter so it'll hold the phone. So they have to make these little clamps, and so that's a great suggestion. I've also got an iPad, which might have adapter options too. So being able to walk around with it is kind of fun. I showed the other class the server room, so I know I'm bouncing around a little bit this morning. Okay, so we've got the SATA cable into this adapter. And like I said, this is clearly labeled. You've got IDE for the ribbon cables. And if you find an older computer that gives you a good idea that it's pretty old, but if somebody's data, you know, if they're trying to get data off of it, this could really be handy. So you'd also need a ribbon cable to connect the drive, which I'll show you. But SATA at this point is much more standardized. You're going to see SATA on just about everything. So we're going to go ahead and plug in the SATA. And if you notice on here, it's a little hard to see. It's kind of got a little notch on one end of it. So just like most connectors on a computer, you can only plug this in one direction. So the chances of plugging things in backwards are pretty slim. On the ribbon cables, they usually have a stripe at one end. So one edge of this ribbon cable has a stripe, and that indicates pin 1. And then the adapter would be notched as well, so you can't put it in backwards. But pin 1 is by the red stripe on the ribbon cables. Okay, so this thing's all plugged in at this point. This end is just a standard USB connector, so for data. So I'm going to plug that into the computer. So we've got a data connectivity at this point, but we don't have power going, so we're going to plug in the power. Now, what this does is basically just makes this an external hard drive. So at this point, plugging this in Windows will typically recognize it and put it into the My Computer section, which I'll show you in just a second. If it doesn't, then you can go into disk management, and you might have to activate the drive or allocate space. But if you're trying to do data, trying to retrieve data off of this thing, you don't want to be formatting it or doing anything like that. You will be simply just accessing this through the operating system. So you'll see what's on there, and you'll browse to it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off here.
You have to unmute yourself, David.
All right, somebody's just joining us from the waiting room. Let's leave this one. Okay, so on the screen here, I hope we will see this device. Okay, so got to power it on. Okay, so now it's spinning up. I can feel the drive actually spinning up here. You can hear it, and we should be able to see this pop up on the screen here.
Dave, you aren't screen sharing.
I did try this earlier, so it did work earlier. Okay, so it's supposed to be popping up there. I just had this up and running a second ago and was reading what was on the drive. Technical difficulties. Try disk management here. Okay, so what I'm going to try is unplugging the USB and plugging the USB back in to try to get it to recognize this as an external drive. I should have just left it plugged in this morning. Okay, we'll come back to that. Sorry about that. So what it's supposed to do is show you the disk pop up, and I was browsing it just before class and was able to see the disk in disk management and under the file explorer. I'm not sure why it's not showing up at this point. Oh no, there it is. Okay, so it just took it a minute to pop up. So there's the actual drive.
Hey Dave, can you hear me?
Hold on.
Okay, so this is I did finally pop up. So it had two small partitions, if you can still see this. And then, so here's where I was talking about if you're trying to do data recovery. And so if you had a drive that somebody had given you, I have a student in one of the other classes there, got an older laptop, and they want to take the hard drive out and want me to pick it up from his other instructor. So we're going to do data recovery. But in this case, this drive had been pretty much wiped. But it does have kind of a funny, so you've got Windows. So here's everything that's installed. This would also be a good way to wipe this drive. So I could run either a disk wiping program, or I could just simply format this drive. But if you're looking for users, data, so most of that would be under users. So if you can read the disk, that means that this drive has been. So if I look at it under disk management, it's finally popped up under disk management. So here's disk 0. One thing with computers too, with devices, they typically start counting at zeros. You have like disk 0, disk 1, disk 2, or Ethernet 0, or if you have 2 cards, Ethernet 0 and 1. So here's the disk, and it's got a small partition here, and then here is the main partition of it. So you could right click, I can say open or explore. Disk management also allows you to extend or shrink volume. So if you were trying to install more than one thing to this hard drive, you could. In this case, we're treating it like we are doing data recovery. So I've got this thing hooked up, and we're going to pretend like we're going to do data recovery. So you would just select it and say explore, and it brings up the program here in Windows. The other thing you would want to do is up under the View menu, make sure you're to look to see that you're seeing hidden files and hidden items. Oh, thanks, Doug. My end's not muted.
Can you hear us?
But you
Hang on
can't
a
hear
second.
us. Yeah.
So I'm not muted. You guys can hear me, but hold on a second.
Oh no, Dave broke it.
So you guys can't unmute yourselves?
Can you hear us?
Doug,
now?
now you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that would help too. Okay, try it again. I can hear you.
How's that? Can you hear us?
Yeah, so the problem was also, I had this is plugged into a TV here, and earlier we were talking about feedback loop. So I muted the TV. So if you guys were yelling at me, I couldn't hear you anyway. So the whole TV was turned off because I was trying to prevent that feedback loop from happening. So we're having multiple technical issues this morning. So I've got like maybe too many screens going, plus with the phone trying to be a separate entity on Zoom. So we'll try and get it figured out so this is a little more smooth operation. But I appreciate you
A little
guys.
bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys yelling at me. It's the first time I was trying to try the phone. A tripod for the phone will help, I think, to have a second screen that I can shoot with and see stuff close up. I do like being able to show you guys stuff close up, but a third set of hands to hold it would be ideal. Okay, so I'm going to try this again. We're going to share this screen here. So we're browsing this hard drive. Just quickly, if you're trying to access user data, a lot of it is under the user's hard drive. So we've got the, let's see. Yeah, so I'm not sure where this drive came from, but it has a public folder, and then it just says your mom for the user. And this was in a big pile of drives, so I think the guys maybe at the IT department thought that was funny to set this up, because they brought me a whole box of drives. So there's nothing in it. You've got, basically it's just the users folder. Now, if you were trying to access stuff, the things you'd be looking for would be under the typical folders that people save stuff in. So documents, downloads, maybe on their desktop. There's really nothing on the desktop other than Microsoft Edge. But if this was a real user, this is where you would see stuff in this directory. So like if I look at, my local drive here, and then go to users, you know, I can see all the normal users that are on there as well. So most of them are under the Dave user. And you can see like my messy desktop and stuff. If I go to the messy desktop, there's a ton of junk on the desktop, right? So users that save stuff on their desktop, here's where the path comes in. If you're trying to find data that's on somebody's computer, you'll need to think about, okay, where do you save stuff from your computer? You know, where is stuff saved that you've got? Most of it is on your most of it's in your downloads. You might have stuff right in the C drive as well. I brought my hat today. I do need to go in and get a haircut one of these days. My wife is threatening to cut my hair, but so where does people save stuff? You've got stuff on your own system, probably on your desktop. You might have stuff saved to the C drive somewhere directly, like if you've made a folder on the root directory. But usually people save things in the places that Windows tells them to. So you've got downloads, you've got documents, pictures, those standard folders that people have been using. That helps quite a bit in terms of trying to access data. But you can see the drive that we've got set up is just a standard SATA drive. There's no, there's no enclosure on this thing. If you got one of these external drive readers, you certainly could use drives as backup storage. You could just do this. You can copy data to them. You can format the drive. You can get the data off later if you want to. So I could take this hard drive, copy a bunch of stuff to it, stick it in the cupboard just as it is. It doesn't need an enclosure around it. When you buy an external hard drive, typically what you're buying is a smaller one, like a laptop drive that would be in an enclosure. And these days, solid state drives are also coming around where you can get solid state drives that are in a small enclosure, but they're quite a bit more expensive. So if you're buying like a 1, 2, 3 terabyte drive, it is probably a laptop drive inside of that enclosure if it's fairly small. Since this drive is quite a bit bigger, it requires an external power source as well. Whereas the small laptop drives can be driven just off of the USB power, right? So you don't need to have that external power source. Okay, so I don't want to get too spread out. I want to show you the external drive thing, because we're getting up to the hard drives chapter, and we do have one that the student is going to be bringing in, or well, I have to sort of pick it up from another location on campus. So we'll do a data extraction off of that. To try to mimic something you guys would find in the real world. Because, you know, if you think about a computer that's not booting, you know, maybe the problems are, so in his case, his computer lights up, but he's not getting anything on the screen. It's got a dead video card. And so that really limits in terms of, you know, he can't replace that. It doesn't appear to be able to be replaceable. So in that case, he, you know, cannot see what's going on on the computer. So somebody's in the chat saying they have stuff saved everywhere. Yeah, and that is, you know, if it's your own computer and you know where the stuff is, then yeah, you can find that under the users directory, go in and look for it. Maybe it's on folders right on the hard drive. If you're working on somebody else's computer, this goes to the book where they're talking about troubleshooting and diagnostics, you know, asking the users questions, you know, trying to figure out what do they have on there? Do they have tax records? Do they have a bunch of JPEG files that they're looking for? And you can do a search for it. So you could say you want to go to that drive and I want to search. So if I show my shared screen again. So this was the main drive that we're looking at. But under the search object up here, you know, if I want to search the entire computer, I can. But if I want to search a specific drive, maybe I want to look for star.txt files. Maybe you know, I don't really care about text files, but you get the idea. If it's going to look for all the text files that are on that particular drive by using that wildcard, the star.txt. So it's going to find a whole bunch of text files, like you care about text files. But maybe you're wanting to find, you know, MP3 files. There might be some on there. Windows does use some audio files for certain tones, but if it doesn't find any, great. So asking the user, trying to figure out what it is that they think is important that's on their drive, that would be a big part of the operation, is this whole, the person-to-person part of it. Sometimes you don't have that. If you're doing data forensics, like on a computer, maybe you know, who knows, maybe you're working for some, you know, a business and they think somebody is trying to take files home and they ask you to look at their laptop and try to get data off of it. You don't have to have the password to do this, right? So what I was doing today is this hard drive is completely out of the computer. It has Windows on it, but you notice that I did not have to log into Windows to look at what's on that hard drive, right? Because I'm logged into my computer, and then that hard drive belongs to a different computer. Now, somebody could put encryption on it. Have you guys ever played with BitLocker or done any file encryption on your computers? Not too, okay.
No.
And that's not real common. You might have noticed if you've bought a flash drive or one of those external hard drives, a lot of them come with a little program that you can activate that you can put a password on. You might have seen that too. So that if you lost your USB drive, for instance, somebody wouldn't be able to pick it up and, you know, see if you had tax records or who knows what on it. One of my students actually found a flash drive last year, and it turned out it was somebody had dropped it that worked at a bank, and it had all kinds of passwords and weird stuff on it. So he actually called the bank, and they were really happy to get this thing back. You know, somebody had dropped this, and it had a lot of data on it that should not have been accessible. So at first we were worried about, just because this is in the security class too, we were worried about just simply plugging a flash drive in, thinking maybe it had viruses or whatever, but the chances of that happening are fairly low, although that is one way that hackers will get stuff on a system, is by, you know, throwing out flash drives on the ground where people pick them up and like, oh, hey, free flash drive, right? How many of you, if you picked up a 64 gig flash drive, would plug it into your computer to see if it worked? Right? Yeah. So that's one. Yeah. So it's one of those things where most of the time it's probably okay, but, you know, if you worked somewhere at a government facility that was, you know, higher security, and you see flash drives around, you know, on the ground or somewhere, probably don't want to just plug them in and go for it that way. All right, so at any rate, it's pretty easy with most drives to plug them in and get access with an external device like this. Oops, somebody's in the waiting room again. And that's a great way to do to get information off the computer if the computer won't boot, because it could be hardware related. You know, the computer could be having some other issues, but the hard drive could be fine. The other thing that comes up is if a hard drive starts making noise, you know, or you're getting error messages on the computer about the drive might be failing or getting bad sectors, you can do this right away. So you can plug it in and get your data off of it before you get complete, you know, catastrophic failure of the hard drive. And I asked before, and I think I've had hard drives fail. I think most, at least a few of you had a hard drive fail at some point. Okay, so are you guys feeling relatively comfortable about the whole taking a screenshot and uploading it? If you need help with that, you can get help from me, or if I can. I put the link up there. The Green Shot program that somebody had just mentioned might be a good option as well, so check that out. We will be doing this again, so if you want to try Green Shot, that sounded like it was a good program. It was pretty small to download, and that way you guys could have that in your bag of tricks for a way to access that. So it's just a way to provide proof that you have stuff going on your system, I think is the short story. Okay, so somebody's saying they don't see the screenshot. Yeah, it was just in this, the 115 class had the test, right? And then the 110 class had the screenshot. If you were only in, how many of you are only in the 115 class? Just a couple of you, okay. So you'll have this as well. I will post it into, when you guys see it come up, you'll know how to do it. I'll post it for both classes. So you'll have periodic assignments. So the quizzes are going to alternate between the two classes. Some stuff that we'll talk about, the hands-on stuff, is kind of like for both. And otherwise, you're only responsible for the assignments that are posted in Canvas for your particular class. But some of the stuff we'll talk about will be for both classes. And this is one of those examples. So if you don't have a screenshot assignment right now, you will down the road. So it's a good thing to know how to do. And again, that green shot looked like it was pretty good. Let me see if I pull that up again. Yeah, it says, GreenShot is the most awesome tool for making screenshots you can get on your PC. Get it now. That's what the website says. So download that, give it a try. And that's one of the nice things about playing around with this stuff is if something comes up, I learn from you guys too. Somebody says, hey, I know a good program for that. So check it out. And the more different types of software you play with, the better able you are to adapt to new situations. You know, like if you're at a business and they have some piece of software you've never used before, but you've used something else that's kind of similar, then you'll be able to jump in. So it's kind of like Hyper-V versus VirtualBox. They both do the same thing, but they're just a little bit different. And so if you can kind of play around with one or the other, when you get jumped into another situation, you'll be like, oh, okay, I haven't used this before, but I feel pretty comfortable that I can learn this. And you know, something like a screenshot tool is usually pretty easy to use, but I'm going to try it out here on my computer. I just downloaded it. And these are handy, like I said, if you're sharing error messages with people, you know, you're working with somebody and you're saying, hey, I got this weird error message, then you could open up a screenshot, you know, cut out the picture that you want, send it to them on, you know, a messenger or email or something like that. So. Okay. We've got some questions in the, here, I'm installing this at the same time. So also when you're installing stuff, just as a heads up, I tend to try to not click next super fast because sometimes it's going to also say it want to install some extra little software that I don't want. Adobe's famous for that, like wanting to install these other little programs. Like, no, I don't want an antivirus or another scanning tool or something on my computer. I don't want an add-on for a toolbar for Chrome. So those are more annoyances than anything else. But okay, so GreenShot should be installed here shortly. Anybody else download that while we're at it? It's greenshot.org. It's pretty easy to find here. Put it in the chat room there. Yes, Adobe is sneaky. They're trying to get stuff. All right, so we're almost out of time for today. Like I said, tomorrow, what I'll probably do, either tomorrow or Wednesday, did I do that with this class where I had you guys kind of break up into smaller groups? I tried that in one of the other, maybe it was one of the other classes. So it's kind of, well, fun is a relative term, but so we've got.
I think it was this one. I can't remember if it was this one or the 9 a.m.
Yeah, it might have been the 9 a.m. class, but basically.
I think it was 120.
Yeah, so one of the options is to create what they call breakout rooms in Zoom. So businesses will use this when they've got a bunch of employees and they want to have them discuss something, but instead of having one big giant discussion, you can do breakout rooms and then you can talk amongst yourselves. So what I was thinking is if you're working on the quiz and you're having problems finding certain answers or whatever, you guys could discuss that before you go to turn them in. Although I think most people, are you finding the answers in the book pretty well? They're in there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Gotta read.
Got to read it. The keyword search is handy. You know, if you've got the file, you can sometimes do a keyword search. Sorry, I was reading this stuff in the chat room. All right, so I think we'll cut it short for today. We got about 5 minutes left. I don't think you're too sad. So get your homework done. If it's the screenshot stuff, just keep an eye on Canvas. So when stuff pops up, you see it. I'll try to give you the heads up during the Zoom sessions if you've got an assignment or a quiz coming up. But be logging into Zoom, get your quizzes done. If you have questions on any of the, so I don't write the questions again. So if you guys have a question about a question, does not hurt my feelings if you're like, hey, Dave, this question's bogus, or I think this question's wrong, or whatever. That's a great way to bring that into class discussion as well. So see if there's other students that also had some some issues with that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording at this point here.